Since Operation Sindoor, India hit 9 terror targets. Pakistan then escalated. India then hit at least 11 Pakistani air bases. This was the closest that we have seen a sort of flare-up between India and Pakistan, certainly since the Kargil War, and that was 25 years ago. The question is this a new normal? And what defines this new normal? What has India achieved at the end of Operation Sindoor? Joining me now is a veteran Pakistan watcher, a former member in the Cabinet Secretariat. Thank you very much, Mr. Tilak Devasher, for speaking with us here on Brass Tacks and on CNN News 18. So now that the military dust has settled, the fog of war has cleared, we're now in a better position to assess Operation Sindoor and the 4 days from the 7th to the 10th. What did India achieve? First militarily, and then we'll come to the narrative part later.
Thank you. Thank you for having me on your show, Zakir. I think several things. You see, after Uri, the attack in 2016 and in Pulwama 2019, India did try to convey a very strong message to Pakistan that we will not accept terror in bilateral relationship. For reasons that can be discussed subsequently, Pakistan seems to have forgotten that lesson. And therefore what Operation Sindoor has done is to reinforce that lesson in a manner that Pakistan is unlikely to forget very soon.
Okay. Why do you say that?
Because despite their so-called Chinese technology, despite their all the stuff that they had, they were not able to prevent Indian ingress to demolish 9 terror camps, including the headquarters of the Jaish and of the Lashkar, which were considered as symbols of the terrorist infrastructure, which was thumbing their thumb, to the whole world. And then we hit 11 air bases, the length and breadth, from Skardu all the way down to Mulir, without any checks. So I think the message that has gone to Pakistan is, hey, whatever equipment we have, or the technology that we have, is not a match for what India has and what India can do. And this is something, mind you, we were measured, we were restrained. There was a time when Lahore was totally defenseless, Sialkot was defenseless, so many other places. The amount of damage that we could have inflicted, even conventionally, I think the message has gone home.
So tell me, conventionally, certainly since the Kargil War, over the last 25 years, since both countries became nuclear weapon states, the conventional wisdom was, there's very limited operational maneuverability, operational room below the nuclear threshold, and therefore India and Pakistan will never be able to go for a full-fledged conventional military war. Do you think progressively now, first with Uri, then with Balakot, and now with Operation Sindoor, India has demonstrated that there are a range of sub-nuclear but conventional military options available?
Yes. In fact, this is something which will be studied by nuclear historians and nuclear scholars for a long time to come. Probably the first instance of its kind where one nuclear weapons power has attacked another nuclear weapons power and basically called their bluff. You see, Pakistan had been blackmailing India and the rest of the world. A, we are irrational. B, if we are threatened, we will use our nuclear weapons. That, that silly fellow was saying, pow pow ke bomb, as if these are toys, Nobody else treats nuclear weapons as war fighting, except Pakistan, but it was a bluff. And India's called their bluff.
So if India has managed to call the nuclear bluff, then how does that strategically reorient the Pakistani military thinking? Because that was their biggest calling card, right? They would always sort of say, you can't, escalate beyond a point because we have a nuclear weapon. But that's been effectively now taken off the table by India. So how does then Pakistan reorient its...
They have to go back to the drawing board.
Okay.
So the two options are stop terrorism, which is the simplest, clearest.
Okay.
They'll be doing themselves a favor. They'll be doing their future generations a favor if they stop this jihadi factory. It'll take them, it's tough, it's not easy. It's going to take them a while to be able to get these fellows, re-educate them, de-radicalize them. I don't know whether they have the capacity to do so, but that is one thing. The other thing when they go back to the drawing board is that now how do we match Indian technology? You see, the lesson they could draw, if they were sensible, is that you can't keep depending on foreign technology. Look at the Chinese technology, it didn't work. It didn't work at all. So look at the Indian example. Bulk of our technology was homemade,
Yeah.
Atmanirbhar. The success of that has been proved. That's the other big thing about Operation Sindoor. And even though they had got so many drones, thousands of drones from Turkey and from China, they were all rendered ineffective by Indian air defense.
So you're saying now they have to go back to the drawing board and say, okay, next time there's an escalation with India, we have to rethink air defenses, we have to rethink the ability to climb the escalation ladder, because clearly it was Pakistan that was climbing the escalation ladder and they were not able to control the escalation ladder. So it would require a fundamental sort of reorientation or rethinking of whether or not the cost is worth the while to be undertaking this.
I think
against
also,
India?
I hope they don't think that there can be a next time, because the punishment that they will get then, I mean, this has been a severe warning to them.
Okay.
And India has still barely used 10 or 15% of its capability. And they also realize that in case they do something as stupid as this again, the consequences for them will be devastating, even under the nuclear threshold.
But let's look at the first point that you said, right? For the most logical thing that any sensible civilized state would do is to stop terrorism.
Yeah.
I mean, the world's sort of tolerance for terrorism is completely gone, especially after 9/11 and 26/11. But if you are a Pakistani general, if you are, let's say, the DGISI, you're looking at this policy that you've carried out for the last 30, 40 years. And, if you're the DGISI, this is a policy that has served you well. What has India done now that is now raising the cost of further continuance of this policy?
Because for the first time, India has hit back at the centers of terrorism. Murid ke,
Bahawalpur.
and this Muzaffarabad, all over the place, where the camps, the forward bases, their training, the ideology, we've hit back for the first time. Pakistan did not expect.
Why did Pakistan think that these places India will never target?
They didn't think India had the guts to do it. Simple as that. They didn't think that the fear of the nuclear overhang, that if they tried something like this, you see, in the case of Balakot, it was one camp.
Yeah.
It was a camp, terror training camp. It wasn't headquarters, it wasn't the markaz. Here you've attacked the markaz in Punjab. So that is something which they didn't expect. That has been so bold, and then followed up by the attack on the air bases. You see, India calibrated their strikes. The first day was only the terror training camps, telling them, you can call it off now. If you want to escalate, you face the consequences. They escalated. And then they had to face the consequences. I mean, people are talking in hushed whispers. Little information is coming out. But I think the strikes that India has made have been strategic strikes. And that is going to be coming out, or is coming out, in bits and pieces.
What do you mean by strategic strikes? Because I'm looking at, Asim Munir wakes up on the 10th morning and he realizes that 11 of his air bases have been attacked, and at least a few of them have been rendered unusable. What does that do to a military, thinking strategist? Like, if 11 of your bases have been attacked in a matter of 4 or 5 hours the previous night, does it then tell him that, look, I can't climb this escalation, or if I do, then it is akin to suicidal because there's no way I can win the next rung of this escalation ladder? And how does that then change his thinking of what do I have to do the next time if I'm going to have to climb the escalation?
So it's not only the air bases were hit, the manner in which they were hit.
Correct.
That Pakistan's air defense was totally ineffective.
Yes.
Now, if you can do it once, you can do it again. And apart from the runways, which can be, of course, repaired, you hit hangars.
Correct.
You destroyed aircraft.
Correct.
And this was just limited to one strike over 22 minutes or whatever time it took. Can you imagine the next wave that comes? Especially like Sargodha, which is the center of the F-16s. It is also supposed to be the storage site of nuclear ammunition.
Yeah.
The nuclear command authority is in the Noor Khan base.
Correct.
Then you have in Jacobabad, you have Malir, and you have Bolari, and all these places. You have effectively taken off the PAF from the table. You see, the PAF has always had this big thing about it since 65, that we are far superior to the Indian Air Force.
Okay.
They've always had this kind of a reputation, or the kind of build-up they give to themselves.
Because of the F-16s and,
Yeah, in 65, 2 vampires were knocked off on the first day of battle, that kind of a thing. It may not be true. I don't think so it's true. But the PF went around and the West bolstered that image because of the F-16s. And India had Russian MiGs and Sukhoi. Yeah. So they bolstered, the media. Now when Asif Munir must have woken up on the 10th and he realized the kind of losses. Therefore the DGMO started calling up the Indian DGMO from 10:30 in the morning.
Correct.
And he didn't take his call till 3:30 in the afternoon. So when you start calling up and saying we are ready for ceasefire, obviously you've been hit so badly
that you realize you can't
it's
escalate.
like a surrender.
So let me get one final word. So what you're saying, Mr. Devshir, is India has now escalated sub-nuclear and hit Pakistan so bad it has to go back to the drawing board, B, analyze whether the cost of terrorism vis-a-vis the benefits of terrorism as they see it is still worth their while, and C, they have to now plan for what happens the next time there's a terror attack in India, then retaliates for that terror attack, because that escalation, I would presume, would be more than what we saw in Operation Sindoor.
Absolutely, absolutely. I think the second point, whether they'll about terrorism.
Yeah.
See, as you rightly said, 30, 40 years they have been
correct
on this terrorism project. It's going to be very difficult for them to pull the plug. A, momentum, it has a certain momentum of its own. They have a complete pipeline, people being sent to madrasas being opened, kids being sent to madrasas, being trained, being given an AK-47 at graduation, and the kind of propaganda which is done, that the Hindu, the Jews, the Christian is your enemy. They are kafirs, you kill them, you go to heaven, That kind of de-radicalization is possibly beyond even if Pakistan was serious, it'll take them a long time, and I don't think so they're going to be serious. They think somebody will always pull them out from the brink. Even now, what happened?
The narrative is that America came in and swooped in and got the ceasefire.
So whereas this is the most rational thing for them to do, I don't see them taking this.
All right, Mr. Devshir, thank you very much for this fascinating conversation. A pleasure speaking with you.
Thank you very much, Zaka. Thank you. Nice talking to you.